Hey und herzlich willkommen zu einem Gespräch mit dem schwedischen Regisseur Carl Olsson. Letztes Jahr war er bei den Nordischen Filmtagen mit seinem Dokumentarfilm Patrimonium vertreten, wo er den Alltag des Landadels im 21. Jahrhundert observierte. In seinem neuen Film Samtidigt på jorden, Meanwhile on Earth, geht es um die Bestattungsbranche und um den Arbeitsalltag all der Menschen, die sich täglich, berufsmäßig mit dem Tod befassen. Varmt välkommen Carl Olsson, trevligt att ses igen.
Tack, tack.
Your film is very surprising and irritating in the way it deals with death. That brings me straight to the question, what is your personal relation to death?
I think I have a quite normal relation to death, which I think is kind of a non-relation to it. I think it's something that I rather not think about, and I think also that we have kind of that in our culture, in the North European culture, that's quite normal relation to death, and that was one of the starting points for the film also, to investigate like our, as a culture and a society, our relation to death.
And do you think our society should deal in a different way with death?
Maybe. I think it was, first of all, it was not a self-therapy film from my own personal relation to death. It was rather a fascination of how we deal with it as a society or as a culture. And I think that I try the film not to be, I don't have a mission for the film, that I think we should deal with it in a specific way, or I think we should, it's more of an observation and try to raise question about how we actually are doing it today, which I think is quite fascinating. Quite strange in many ways. So it's more like putting that question out there. And in that perspective, then my opinions about it are not that important, I think, or wasn't that interesting for me really with the film. So I hope that the film can be open up for that kind of questions, how we relate. Maybe also our relationship to death are the reaction of some other things in the society. Why we are very short-minded, for example, and don't reflect on it that much and so on.
But do you think that the topic death has gained relevance in times of pandemic? I mean, do you think we're more confronted with it?
Yeah, in a way, probably, and probably more when you are in the risk groups, for example, of getting the disease, then it's become more relevant, I think. And maybe it's one of the good things coming out from the pandemic, that we're getting a closer relation to it, and actually see it what it is, or start talking about it maybe. In a way, I think not to. Then answering your other question, I would probably say that more focus on it, and more the more we talk about it and deal with it, the better. And I also thought that was also the thoughts of the people working with death that are like the participants in the film, that they were talking about. That they thought we as a society was very distant to it in a very bad way, because they of course see it every day, so they have a bit of a different relationship and see it more natural, maybe as a more normal part of life than maybe I do or did.
So that brings me to my next question. How was your research for the film? How did you talk to people and how did you find them?
I always do a lot of research and try to, like, also for my own sake, to try to find out what this could be and what's really into this theme. So I actually, the idea actually came from another film, because I thought from my graduation film from the film school in Denmark, where I had some guys working in a crematorium, and they were having this very relaxed relationship to death. I thought they were whistling, and they were like any other workspaces. At the same time, they were working with something that was very existential in some way. So that was like a very clear contrast in the same image, and also a provocation of some kind. And I thought that was a very complex image, and was something that I could continue working. So from that on, I started after the school to research what else there are the crematorium, but what other professions are there in this business and in this industry. And then I met, I started, my Malmö in South Sweden was my like starting point, because that was also close by. I'm living in Copenhagen, so it was easy for me to start there. So I think I met everybody in the business in different roles, many morgue workers and crematorium workers and transporters and people working at the graveyard, digging, all of them. So I tried to like find all the different characters, and also find out what kind of location, what kind of rooms are they working in. And then I tried, picked and the participant that I thought was more interesting, and of course asked them if they wanted to be a part of my film. So it was a lot of research, a lot of meetings, and a lot of exploring those different locations and places.
And then while you were filming, how did you work with them? I mean, how did you rehearse, or how did the dialogues come up? How did you do that?
Yeah, it is also a method that I worked with in another film, the last film you mentioned also, that I tried to, they are in a way very written, the scenes, because I do a lot of research and getting a lot of information. What scenes could it be in this world or this universe? And then I see, okay, maybe we can make this kind of scene, and maybe I can document this kind of action. And then I talk to the participants a lot about that. I also draw them, so it's kind of manuscript in a way, the scenes. So it's very set up, but I try to do it as much as everything is kind of set up until the dialogue, because the dialogue are not directed at all. So I try to like push the reality in so it fits my the style of the film and so on. And then I usually leave the camera and the scene for the authentic action or the authentic scene to come along. So it's more like pressing the reality to a certain point where there could also be an openness for something that I couldn't realize. I can't write that kind of dialogue either that they are talking about. I think, or at least I don't have the imagination to come up with that kind of dialogue. I think usually when I leave some space for the authentic to happen, then usually the more of that space I leave, the better becomes the dialogue, or more interesting the dialogue. And I was also not fishing for some special kind of dialogue. There was also the opposite in this film, because I wanted something that was very trivial, because that gave the most contrast to the existential that they're actually a part of and doing. So I also liked when they were talking about the weather and talked about nothing and talked about food or whatever it could be. So I actually cut out everything that was more personal or more, that was dealing with the work more and so on. So it was kind of an opposite way to work, if that gives any sense.
You show some very old people also in the film that are waiting to be the next in the morgue. Did you tell them you're making a film about death? I'm sure you did, but what did you talk to them about death, and how did they reflect upon that?
I had there was also a plan from the beginning that I wanted some characters or some personalities that could be a representative of us, the non-business people that are not working in the business and not have that relationship to death. So Jan, that became kind of a main character in some way, that had his mother in a retirement home, and kind of was in a waiting stage. So I was looking for that kind of character from the beginning. So I found him through a retirement home, and we all talked about that all the time. And like from the beginning, also the possibility that during this process, his mother might die because she is very old. She's not dead still yet, though. But that was a possibility for the film. It could also be a possibility that the portrait of him was a portrait of the waiting stage or the loneliness of us that's still here and so on. And also that the fragile state of having an old relative. So we talked a lot about that in the beginning. So he is also, because that was the plan all the time, he's also more of a fictional character than the others, even if it's based on him and his life, of course, and his mother. We staged even more his kind of scenes to get that loneliness feeling in his scene. And then we have some other old people in the film. We have a bingo place where they play bingo. And that was all, and one that's singing karaoke. And they were more of a structural element in the film that I needed something to draw us out of the industry. Because I think when we are in that industry, we stop looking at it in a förfremdung kind of way. I think in the beginning we look with it that it's something strange, or it's something strangeness in our relationship to the subject. But when we have seen a couple of scenes of them, I think it's an automatization process that we are accepting it as the normal. And then I needed some scenes to take us out there, to activate us again, to scenes that wasn't really related to the subject, or was very vague related to the subject. And that was also this bingo hall, for example. So they are more casted on a way of how the atmosphere were in that place. But it, of course, could be a waiting scene also. It could be that it was thought to be a waiting room, this bingo hall, for example, also. But I found this later. I was filming there in the bingo hall also. So our discussion before, she know what kind of film, she's also seen the film afterwards. So she, of course, know what my intentions with it was. But then it's up to like interpretation also what that scene could be, and I think it could be different for different persons also.
But the people have seen the film that were in it, all of them. Yeah,
and I usually have or at least I have so many participants in my film, so I usually the ones that are there in more than one scene, I have a closer cooperation with. So the ones that have a couple of scenes where they come back, they have been a part of the editing process also. Or I have showed them when we had a rough cut, for example. I showed them also parts in the development of the film, so they can see what kind of feeling it is and so on. So it's very important to have this quite close cooperation with them too, so they can, understand what kind of look upon their business this will be, and all of them have been actually very, very happy about it, and think also that well, they have experienced that it represents quite well the environment and the everyday life they have.
You have this very special imagery also, this, I would call it Carl Olsson style almost, with these perfect pictures, and the rooms where things take place are very important. I wonder, where do you take your inspiration from? What are the cinematographers or photographers that you have in mind? Or Is it just
I think it comes from the beginning. Of course, I think there is a tradition of the tableau image, which there are many people that inspires me and that work in that tradition. It could be the Austrians, Ulrich Seidel and Mikael Glauberger, for example, or it could be Roy Andersson in Sweden, Aki Kaurismäki in Finland, Jan Lett in Denmark, Jacques Tati in France. There are maybe Fellini's earlier films, for example, work a lot of tableau images as well. So there are traditions that, of course, I'm a part of and get very inspired by. And we started already at the film school, me and one of the cinematographers to this film, to work how can we work with this, and what kind of parameters can we bend, and can we kind of turn to make this as we want to. I think there's something with the kind of stiffness in the framing. If you put the framing in a specific way, that are kind of with the 1 point perspective and the very preciseness of the image, I think it creates kind of a contrast between the image and the participant, because then the participant stands out as very organic and very human in some way. And I think that is making it easier to look at them with a more anthropological eyes or glasses, so that we can see them maybe as a representative of us, the human beings, or as a society and so on, and not necessarily psychological characters. I think that's what the close-up image can do a lot, and are very good at doing, is to transfer a feeling, or how the participants are doing, it can create a very good picture of the psychological psychology of a character, a specific character. But in the right way, the tableau image could have the opposite, to create more like physical portrait of the character, and also a more anthropological way, that they are not individual characters, and they are important because they are representative of us, and we can recognize ourselves in them. So, yeah.
So what is your next project?
The next project is, hopefully, I have been working some years on a film about in kind of the same style, with men working on an oil tanker out in the North Sea. So it's a film about manlyhood and loneliness as well, out in a very confined space, far out at sea, where they are a very long time. So that's also a kind of an anthropological perspective of men. And
have you started to film yet, or is it research?
Yeah, I have filmed a lot, so it's more in a financing process. And
great!
Get the finance. That's with all the films. That's the longest process and most difficult process, to get it to be able to make it. But I hope that will be the next one.
I hope we'll see you then again in Lübeck next year, live, really nice. Hopefully.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Carl Olsson.
Thanks a lot.
Danke, liebes Publikum, dass ihr dabei wart, und genießt noch das Filmfestival in der Wohnzimmer-Couch oder wo auch immer. Und ja, tschüss und hey do.
Hey.
Hey.